The rain hammered like bullets against the windshield of James Sullivan's Range Rover. Lightning slashed through the Oregon night, briefly illuminating the empty suburban streets of Portland's West Hills. The digital clock on the dashboard read 11:43 p.m. James squinted through the downpour, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. 45 years old CEO of Sullivan Construction and still working 14-hour days. This was the third late-night executive meeting this month. The Baldwin Tower project was behind schedule over budget, and the investors were getting nervous. James had spent the evening reassuring them, projecting the confidence that had made him one of Portland's most successful businessmen. Yet beneath the tailored suit and practiced smile lay exhaustion that ran bone deep. His phone buzzed with a text from Gloria, his son's babysitter. "Ethan finally asleep, left dinner in fridge. See you tomorrow." James sighed. Another bedtime missed. Another day his 7-year-old son had gone to sleep without saying goodnight to his father. The familiar weight of guilt settled in his chest, heavier than the rain clouds above. 4 years had passed since Sarah died. 4 years since cancer had taken his wife and Ethan's mother. 4 years of James trying to be both parents while building his company into a regional powerhouse. The success had come, but at what cost? Their sprawling home in Portland's most exclusive neighborhood felt hollow, a showcase rather than a sanctuary. Lightning flashed again, and James caught sight of something that didn't belong. Two small figures huddled beneath a bus shelter on the corner of Riverview Drive. His foot instinctively eased off the accelerator. In this wealthy neighborhood at this hour in this weather, something wasn't right. He slowed the SUV, peering through sheets of rain. A woman and a child, soaked through despite the minimal protection of the shelter. The woman clutched the child close, both of them shivering. James's finger hovered over the button to lower his window, then hesitated. In his position, caution had become second nature. People always wanted something from James Sullivan: money, jobs, donations, connections. And yet, "Don't get involved," whispered a voice in his head that sounded suspiciously like his CFO. But another voice, Sarah's voice, whispered back, "Stop the car, James." He pulled over, grabbing his umbrella from the passenger seat. The rain drenched his Italian leather shoes and the bottom of his suit pants as he approached. The woman looked up, startled by his presence. She appeared young, maybe 30, with dark hair plastered against her pale face. She wore what looked like a nurse's scrubs beneath a thin jacket. The child in her arms, a little blonde girl, whimpered softly. "Excuse me," James called over a thunderclap. "Are you all right?" The woman's eyes, blue and filled with a mixture of fear and defiance, met his. "We're fine. Just waiting for the bus." Her voice cracked on the obvious lie. The buses had stopped running over an hour ago. James noticed the child shivering. "Your daughter looks cold. Can I offer you a ride somewhere? Hospital, police station?" The woman pulled the child closer. "We don't need help from strangers." The little girl let out a sudden harsh cough that shook her tiny frame. James recognized the distinctive sound. Ethan had asthma too. "Does she have asthma?" "Does she have her inhaler?" James asked, concern overriding formality. Surprise flickered across the woman's face. "Yes, but—" She bit her lip. "It's empty. We were trying to get to the pharmacy, but it closed." "I have one at home. My son has asthma too." James gestured toward his SUV. "Please let me help you. This weather isn't safe for her." The woman hesitated, clearly weighing her desperate situation against the risk of trusting a stranger. Another coughing fit from her daughter seemed to make the decision for her. "We don't have anywhere to go." 6 words that hung in the air between them like a confession. "We got evicted this morning." James felt something shift in his chest. A door, long closed, creaking open just a fraction. "Come with me. My home is nearby. We can get your daughter warm, and I have spare inhalers." 20 minutes later, James was unlocking the door to his West Hills mansion. The woman, Rebecca Collins, she'd reluctantly introduced herself during the drive, stood behind him with her daughter Lily clutched to her hip. James felt a strange discomfort as he watched Rebecca take in the soaring entryway, with its marble floors and crystal chandelier. Her face remained carefully neutral, but he could read the unspoken thought. People live like this, while others sleep in bus shelters. "James, is that you?" Gloria appeared from the living room, her face lined with concern. "I was worried with the storm." She stopped, noticing the bedraggled pair behind him. "Gloria, this is Rebecca and her daughter Lily. They need a place to stay tonight. Lily has asthma and needs treatment." Gloria, a 60-something widow who had been with the family since Ethan was born, and assessed the situation with a single glance and immediately shifted into caretaking mode. The poor dears are soaked through. I'll run a warm bath for the little one and find some dry clothes. As Gloria ushered Rebecca and Lily upstairs, James caught Rebecca's whispered, "Thank you." He nodded, feeling oddly undeserving of her gratitude. In the kitchen, James prepared hot tea while listening to the sounds of life above running water, soft voices, Gloria's gentle laughter. He rarely heard laughter in this house anymore. He moved through the expansive kitchen, automatically the space designed by a celebrity chef, but seldom used for anything more elaborate than reheating takeout. When Rebecca descended the stairs 30 minutes later, she looked transformed. Her hair was dry, falling in soft waves to her shoulders. She wore a pair of Sarah's old sweatpants and a t-shirt that James hadn't been able to donate with the rest of her clothes. The sight caused an unexpected pang. "Lily's asleep in the guest room. Your housekeeper found her some pajamas and gave her the inhaler. She's breathing much better." Rebecca paused. "Thank you for helping us. Not many people would have stopped." James handed her a mug of tea. "Please sit. You must be exhausted." Rebecca sank into a chair at the kitchen island, her shoulders finally releasing some tension. "I should explain." "You don't have to," James interrupted. "I want to." She wrapped her hands around the mug. "I was a nurse at Portland General for 6 years. Pediatric unit. I'm good at my job, was good at my job. The hospital was bought out by a healthcare conglomerate 3 months ago. They laid off 20 nurses, including me. Said it was restructuring for efficiency." James knew the company she was referring to. Sullivan Construction had renovated their corporate headquarters last year. "I've been looking for another nursing position, but the job market is tight. They're all hiring new graduates, they can pay less. My savings ran out last month. Lily's asthma medication isn't covered fully by our emergency insurance." Her voice faltered. "Today was eviction day. I sold what I could. The rest is in a storage unit I probably won't be able to afford next month." Rebecca stared into her tea. "I called every shelter in Portland. They're all full. The storm hit while we were walking to a motel that might take the last of my cash." She looked up, her eyes meeting his. "I've never been homeless before. I don't know what I'm doing." James felt an unexpected kinship with this woman. Despite their vastly different circumstances, he recognized the look of someone navigating uncharted waters, trying to stay afloat for the sake of their child. "I understand more than you might think," he found himself saying. 4 years ago, my wife Sarah died of ovarian cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it. We tried everything, cutting-edge treatments, experimental protocols. I leveraged everything I had. It still wasn't enough." Rebecca's expression softened with genuine empathy. "I'm so sorry. Ethan was 3 when she died. I had a successful business but a broken heart. I threw myself into work because I didn't know what else to do. Built the company into something bigger, made more money than I could ever spend." He gestured at the house around them. "And somehow still failed at the one thing that mattered, being there for my son." The confession surprised him. He never discussed Sarah, rarely spoke about his struggles with anyone. Yet something about this stranger's raw vulnerability made his own defenses fall away. "You haven't failed," Rebecca said quietly. "Your son is healthy, safe, loved. You've given him security. That counts for something." Her words touched him in a way no platitude from friends or colleagues ever had. This woman who had lost everything was offering him comfort. "You'll stay here tonight," James said with sudden decisiveness, "and tomorrow we'll figure out next steps." Rebecca started to protest, but James held up his hand. "The guest suite has a separate bedroom for Lily. It's already past midnight. Get some rest, and things will look clearer in the morning." After showing Rebecca to the guest suite, James checked on Ethan. His son slept peacefully, his dark hair, so like Sarah's, tousled against the pillow. Dinosaur books were scattered across his bed, and his inhaler sat on the nightstand. James gently removed the books and pulled the blanket higher over Ethan's shoulders. "I'm trying, buddy," he whispered. "I'm not very good at this, but I'm trying." Morning arrived with sunlight streaming through the windows and the unfamiliar sound of childish laughter. James, already dressed for work in one of his customary suits, followed the sound to the kitchen. There he found a scene so unexpected it stopped him in the doorway. Ethan, still in his rocket ship pajamas, was perched at the kitchen island next to Lily. Both children were giggling as Gloria flipped pancakes into elaborate shapes. Rebecca stood by the coffee maker looking more rested but still cautious, as if expecting to be asked to leave at any moment. Ethan spotted him first. Dad, Gloria is making dinosaur pancakes, and Lily likes dinosaurs too. She knows all about the herbivores. That's the plant-eating ones. James felt an unfamiliar warmth at his son's animation. Ethan was usually quiet in the mornings, answering James's attempts at conversation with monosyllabic responses. "Good morning," he managed, catching Rebecca's eye. "I hope you slept well." "Better than we have in weeks," she admitted. "Thank you." Over breakfast, James watched the children interact. Ethan showed Lily his tablet, and they played a game together, heads bent close in concentration. It struck James how rarely Ethan had friends over. Between James's work schedule and Ethan's asthma-restricted activities, his son's social circle was limited. "I like having Lily here," Ethan announced, suddenly looking up at his father. "Our house is too quiet since Mom went to heaven. It's nice to have more people." The simple observation hit James with unexpected force. Out of the mouth of babes, as Sarah would have said. He glanced at Rebecca, who was studying her coffee cup with intense focus, clearly uncomfortable. "We should get going soon," she said softly. "We've imposed enough." "Where will you go?" James asked. Rebecca had no answer. "Stay," James found himself saying, "at least until you find a job and get back on your feet. We have plenty of room and Ethan could use the company." The offer surprised him as much as it did Rebecca. James Sullivan, known for his calculated business decisions, was inviting strangers into his home indefinitely. "I couldn't accept that," Rebecca protested. "We're not your responsibility. Consider it a loan, not charity. You can repay me by helping Gloria with Ethan when I'm working late. She's been wanting to reduce her hours anyway." This was true. Gloria had been hinting about retirement for months. Rebecca still hesitated. "Please," Ethan added, his eyes wide and hopeful. "Lily can share my video games." Rebecca looked at her daughter, who was happily devouring a dinosaur pancake, then back at James. "Temporarily," she conceded, "and I'll contribute as soon as I find work." In the weeks that followed, the Sullivan household transformed. Rebecca proved resourceful and determined, securing a position at a neighborhood clinic within days. She rearranged the kitchen into something functional rather than merely photogenic. Fresh flowers appeared on tables. The formal dining room, unused since Sarah's death, became a place for family meals. James found himself looking forward to coming home. The hollow silence that had pervaded the house had been replaced by life. Lily's giggles, Ethan's more frequent chatter, even Rebecca's soft humming as she moved through the rooms. He began adjusting his schedule, leaving the office earlier when possible, delegating tasks he once would have handled personally. One evening, as James reviewed contracts in his home office, his assistant called with unexpected news. "James, Amanda Carter's lawyer called. She's filing for custody of Ethan." Amanda, Sarah's younger sister. She had made her disapproval of James's parenting clear from the beginning, suggesting repeatedly that Ethan might be better off with her and her husband in Seattle. "On what grounds?" James demanded. The lawyer mentioned concerns about the home environment and unexplained individuals residing in the household. Apparently, someone informed her about Ms. Collins and her daughter. The neighbors, it had to be. Portland's elite social circles thrived on gossip, and James's sudden domestic arrangement had undoubtedly raised eyebrows. "Have Peterson prepare a response. Amanda has no legal standing," James instructed, but unease settled in his stomach. Legal standing or not, a custody challenge meant scrutiny of his life, his parenting, his choices. The last thing Rebecca and Lily needed was to be dragged into a family dispute. Later that night, after the children were asleep, James found Rebecca on the back terrace, wrapped in a cardigan against the evening chill. She'd taken to spending quiet moments there, gazing at the city lights below. "You look troubled," she observed as he joined her. James explained the situation with Amanda, watching Rebecca's expression shift from concern to guilt. "This is my fault," she said. "Our presence is complicating your life." "No," James insisted. "Amanda has always thought she could parent Ethan better than me. She's just using you and Lily as an excuse." Rebecca wasn't convinced. "Still, perhaps it would be better if we found another arrangement. I've saved a little from my new job, maybe enough for a security deposit on a small apartment." The thought of Rebecca and Lily leaving created an unexpected hollow feeling in James's chest. Don't make any decisions yet. Let's see how this plays out. The custody challenge was just the beginning. The following week, James was called to an emergency meeting of Sullivan Construction's board of directors. Philip Reston, the silver-haired chairman, didn't mince words. James, several board members have expressed concerns about recent developments in your personal life. Reston's tone was carefully neutral, but his meaning was clear. With the Baldwin Tower project already under scrutiny, we can't afford any negative publicity. Our investors are conservative people who value stability and traditional family values. James felt a flash of anger. My personal arrangements are none of the board's concern. They become our concern when they affect the company's reputation, countered Diane Mercer, another long-standing board member. You're the public face of Sullivan Construction. Your decisions reflect on all of us. James surveyed the faces around the table, people he'd worked with for years, whose respect he'd earned through dedication and results. Now they looked at him with doubt, all because he'd offered shelter to a woman and child in need. If helping a nurse and her daughter avoid homelessness damages our reputation, perhaps we should reconsider what this company stands for, James said evenly. The meeting ended in an uneasy stalemate, but the message was clear. James was being watched both as a father and as a CEO. These external pressures coincided with subtle shifts within the household. James began noticing things about Rebecca, the graceful way she moved, how her face lit up when she laughed, the gentle strength she showed with both children. He found reasons to be in rooms where she was initiated conversations that extended beyond practical household matters. One evening, their hands brushed as they both reached for the same file on his desk. Rebecca had offered to help organize paperwork, and the brief contact sent an unexpected current through him. Their eyes met, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Rebecca stepped back first, mumbling an excuse about checking on Lily. James remained frozen, confronting emotions he'd buried since Sarah's death. Guilt followed immediately. Was he betraying Sarah's memory by feeling this attraction? Was it even real or just a reaction to having a woman's presence in his life again? His confusion and guilt made him withdraw. He began working later again, avoiding the family dinners that had become routine. Rebecca noticed, of course. Her questioning glances followed him, but she respected his distance. The children, however, had grown inseparable. Ethan had blossomed, with Lily's friendship becoming more outgoing, his grades improving. One afternoon, James overheard him telling his school a friend on a video call, "My sister Lily is teaching me to draw horses. She's really good at it." Sister, the word lingered in James's mind. Ethan had created a family structure in his imagination, filling the emptiness left by Sarah's death. It was both heartwarming and terrifying. What would happen when Rebecca and Lily eventually left? This question haunted James as tensions continued mounting on multiple fronts. Amanda's custody petition progressed, with a social worker scheduled to evaluate the home situation. The board's scrutiny intensified after a local gossip column ran an item speculating about the mysterious woman living in James Sullivan's mansion. And Rebecca, sensing the complications her presence was causing, grew increasingly determined to find her own housing. The situation reached a breaking point one evening when James returned home to find Rebecca in his study, standing before Sarah's portrait with tears streaming down her face. "Rebecca," he asked softly, "what's wrong?" She turned, hastily wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't be in here." She gestured toward the portrait. She was beautiful. Ethan has her smile. Yes, James agreed, moving closer. She was extraordinary. Brilliant, compassionate, stubborn as hell when she believed in something. "I feel like an intruder," Rebecca confessed, taking up space in her home, using her things, caring for her son. "Sometimes I catch Ethan looking at me in a way that—" She stopped, unable to continue. "In what way?" James pressed. "Like he's hoping I'll stay forever. Like I'm some kind of replacement." Her voice broke. "I'm not trying to replace anyone, James. I would never presume." "No one thinks that," James said quickly, though he wasn't entirely sure it was true. Hadn't he himself been wondering about his feelings for Rebecca, about the family they seemed to be accidentally forming? Rebecca shook her head. "It's not right. This situation is confusing for the children. For all of us." She squared her shoulders. "I've found an apartment. It's small, in a different school district, but it's affordable. Lily and I can move next week." James felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath him. Is that really what you want? What I want doesn't matter, Rebecca said quietly. What matters is what's right. You have enough complications in your life without adding us to the mix. Your sister-in-law, your company, we're making everything harder for you. Oh. That's not true, James insisted, moving closer. Rebecca, since you and Lily arrived, this house has become a home again. Ethan is happier than he's been in years. And he hesitated, unsure how to express the awakening he'd experienced. I'm beginning to remember what it's like to live, not just exist. Rebecca looked up at him, her blue eyes filled with conflict. James, I can't afford to build my life on someone else's foundation. I've spent the last months of my life losing everything. I need to rebuild on my own terms. James understood independence. It was the cornerstone of his own personality, the driving force behind his success. And yet, what if it's not about dependence or independence? What if it's about connection, about finding people who make you stronger, not weaker? Something shifted in Rebecca's expression. The walls she'd carefully maintained began to crack. I'm afraid, she admitted, afraid of relying on someone again, afraid of what happens when that someone realizes they've made a mistake. James took her hand, feeling the slight tremble in her fingers. I'm afraid too, afraid of caring too much, afraid of losing again. He drew a deep breath. But maybe being afraid together is better than being afraid alone. Their moment of vulnerability was interrupted by the doorbell. Gloria appeared in the doorway, her expression troubled. James, there's a Mr. Daniel Reed here to see Rebecca. He says he's Lily's father. Rebecca's face drained of color. Daniel here, her hand tightened around James's. He can't be here. He can't know where we are. Who is he? James asked, concern mounting at her reaction. Lily's father, my ex. She searched for words. Controlling, manipulative. He threatened to take Lily if I ever left him. That's why I never told him where we went after the eviction. How did he find you? I don't know, maybe the clinic where I work. He has connections everywhere. Fear made her voice tremble. James, he's a businessman too. Reed Development. You might know him. James did know the name. Daniel Reed was a mid-level developer with a reputation for cutting corners and aggressive tactics. Sullivan Construction had refused to work with him on ethical grounds. You don't have to see him, James assured her. If I don't, he'll just come back. Or worse, go to Lily's school. Rebecca straightened her shoulders. I have to face him. James led Rebecca to the formal living room where Daniel Reed waited. The man turned as they entered, mid-30s, expensively dressed, with the practiced smile of someone used to getting his way. Rebecca, his voice held false warmth. I've been worried sick, disappearing with my daughter without a word. You lost the right to worry when you changed the locks on our apartment. Rebecca replied, her voice surprisingly steady. Daniel's smile tightened. A misunderstanding with the property management company. I've been trying to reach you to make it right. His gaze shifted to James, standing protectively close to Rebecca. Though I see you've landed on your feet, or should I say in James Sullivan's mansion, quite the upgrade. Mr. Reed, James interrupted, disliking the man instantly. It's getting late, and there are children sleeping upstairs. Perhaps you could state your purpose. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly at the interruption. Simple. I'm here for my daughter. It's been weeks since I have seen Lily, and as her father I have rights. Rebecca tensed beside James. You've never exercised those rights before. You've never even taken her to a doctor's appointment or a school function. People change, Daniel said smoothly. Losing you both made me realize what matters. He turned to James with a shark-like smile. Sullivan, surely as a father yourself, you understand a man's connection to his child. I'm sure you wouldn't want someone keeping your son from you. The manipulation was transparent but effective. James did understand the bond between parent and child. He also understood the fear radiating from Rebecca. Mr. Reed, James said carefully, this is not the appropriate time or place for this discussion. Rebecca and Lily are my guests, and they're under my protection while they're here. I suggest you consult your attorney if you wish to discuss visitation rights. Daniel's facade of friendliness dropped. Protection, is that what you call it? How interesting. His gaze swept from James to Rebecca and back. The business community in Portland would be fascinated to hear how the esteemed James Sullivan is protecting a woman and child in his home. especially with the Baldwin Tower project under such scrutiny. Investors get nervous about negative publicity. The threat was unmistakable. James felt a cold anger rising in him. "Are you attempting to blackmail me, Mr. Reed?" "Not at all. Just making an observation." Daniel reached into his jacket and withdrew a business card, offering it to Rebecca. "I'll be filing for custody, of course. Joint to start. My lawyer will be in touch." His smile returned colder now. "Think carefully about how you want this to proceed, Rebecca. Your current arrangement might not look favorable to a family court judge." After Daniel left, Rebecca collapsed onto the sofa, trembling. "He's going to take her. He's going to use this situation against me." What? James sat beside her, his mind racing through scenarios, evaluating threats and options as he would a business problem. "He won't take Lily, I promise you that." "You don't know him," Rebecca said. "When Daniel wants something, he gets it, no matter who he has to hurt." "I know his type," James countered. "Men like Daniel Reed may seem powerful, but they have weaknesses. We just need to find them." He took her hand. "Rebecca, do you trust me?" She looked up, her eyes still clouded with fear, but with a spark of something else, hope, perhaps, or determination. "Yes," she said finally. "I do." James nodded, a decision crystallizing. "Then we fight, together. Not just against Daniel, but against anyone who tries to tear apart what we've built here." He gestured to the house around them, but they both knew he meant more than the physical structure. "It won't be easy. My sister-in-law, your ex, the board, they all have their own agendas. But some things are worth fighting for." "What are you saying, James?" Rebecca asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm saying that I don't want you and Lily to leave. Not next week, not ever. I'm saying that somehow in the middle of all this chaos, we become a family, and I don't want to lose that." James took a deep breath, putting words to feelings he'd been avoiding for weeks. "I'm saying that I'm falling in love with you, Rebecca Collins, and I think that terrifies us both." Rebecca's eyes widened. For a moment, James feared he'd misread everything, pushed too far too fast. Then she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his in a kiss that felt like coming home after a very long journey. When they separated, Rebecca's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "What do we do now?" Before James could answer, his phone rang. Checking the screen, he saw it was his lawyer. The news wouldn't be good, it never was at this hour. But for the first time in 4 years, James felt ready to face whatever challenge came next. He had someone worth fighting for. "Now," he said, squeezing Rebecca's hand before answering the call, "we face everything together." Spring sunlight streamed through the windows of James Sullivan's kitchen, a stark contrast to the stormy night 3 months earlier, when Rebecca and Lily had first entered his life. James adjusted his tie, watching Ethan and Lily share breakfast at the island counter, their heads bent together over a tablet showing a documentary about marine life. The children had grown inseparable, forming a bond that seemed to deepen daily. Their easy companionship highlighted the fragility of what they'd built, a makeshift family under constant threat of dissolution. James caught Rebecca's eye as she packed Ethan's lunch. So much remained unspoken between them since that night of revelations and their first kiss. The past months had become a delicate balancing act of nurturing their budding relationship while battling external pressures that threatened to tear them apart. Rebecca slipped a handwritten note into Ethan's lunchbox, a daily ritual she'd begun that the boy treasured. Such small gestures had transformed the hollow mansion into something warm and alive again. Yet beneath the domestic tranquility, anxiety simmered. Daniel Reed's custody petition loomed over them like a storm cloud, while Amanda's separate claim for Ethan cast an equally dark shadow. "Board meeting today." Rebecca's question broke the morning silence, her eyes noting his formal attire. James nodded, checking his watch. "Quarterly review. The Baldwin Tower project is 6 weeks behind schedule, and the investors are getting restless." He left unsaid the additional pressure that several board members continued questioning his personal life, viewing his relationship with Rebecca as a potential liability. Rebecca stepped closer, straightening his already perfect tie in a gesture that felt wonderfully intimate. "They're lucky to have you." Her confidence in him never wavered, even when his own resolve faltered beneath the weight of competing responsibilities. "We have the social worker visit tomorrow," she reminded him softly, ensuring the children couldn't hear. "I've taken the afternoon off to prepare." The custody evaluations had begun with both Daniel and Amanda leveraging the legal system to scrutinize every aspect of their household. Each interview, home visit, and court filing drained emotional resources already stretched thin. "We'll be ready." James brushed his lips against her forehead, drawing strength from her presence. "I should be home by 6 unless the board meeting runs long." As he drove to the Sullivan Construction headquarters in downtown Portland, James mentally rehearsed his presentation. The Baldwin Tower represented the company's largest current project, a 40-story mixed-use development that would reshape the city skyline. Engineering complications and supply chain issues had caused delays, but the fundamental problem was the board's hesitation following negative press coverage connecting James to Daniel Reed. He pulled into his reserved parking space beneath the Sullivan Building, a gleaming glass tower that had been the company's first major accomplishment under his leadership. The security guard's greeting carried a note of caution. "Mr. Sullivan, the board members arrived early. They're waiting in the conference room." An ambush, then. James straightened his shoulders and rode the elevator to the top floor where his assistant, Melissa, waited with obvious concern. "They've been in there for 40 minutes already." Reston's assistant said they were discussing leadership transitions. The conference room fell silent as James entered. 12 faces turned toward him, expressions ranging from apologetic to resolute. Philip Reston, the silver-haired board chairman, sat at the head of the table, a position traditionally reserved for James. "James, thank you for joining us." Reston's formal tone confirmed James's suspicions. This wasn't a routine quarterly meeting. James took the only available seat halfway down the table, immediately noting the folder marked "Succession Planning" in front of each board member. "I wasn't aware we'd be discussing leadership transitions today." Our agenda focused on the Baldwin Tower timeline. Reston cleared his throat, exchanging glances with Diane Mercer, the company's longest-serving board member. "Circumstances have evolved, requiring us to consider all options to protect shareholder value." James maintained a neutral expression, despite the obvious coup attempt unfolding. "What circumstances specifically?" Diane slid a newspaper across the table. The business section featured a headline: "Sullivan Construction loses Westridge contract amid CEO's personal controversy." The article detailed how Westridge Investments had withdrawn from a planned $40 million development, citing uncertainty around Sullivan Construction's leadership stability. The piece explicitly mentioned James's unconventional living arrangement and the competing custody claims involving his household. "We've lost 3 major contracts in 6 weeks, Reston continued. "Clients are concerned about negative publicity affecting their investments. The Westridge pullout represents a 12% projected revenue loss for the coming fiscal year." James skimmed the article, his mind already calculating responses and counters. "The Westridge deal was tentative. We have 6 other projects in the pipeline that will more than compensate." "This isn't just about Westridge." Diane's interruption was uncharacteristically sharp. "Daniel Reed is now actively lobbying our clients to withdraw their business. He's claiming you've displayed questionable judgment and emotional instability since taking in his ex-partner and daughter." Another board member, Thomas Green, leaned forward. "We've also received inquiries from 3 journalists about the custody situation." "Your private life is becoming a liability, James." The orchestrated pressure mounted as each board member expressed similar concerns. James recognized the strategy they were building, consensus against him, preparing to propose a temporary step back that would effectively end his leadership. When the initial volley concluded, James stood buttoning his suit jacket in a deliberate gesture of control. "Let me ensure I understand correctly. You're suggesting that helping a single mother and child in desperate circumstances demonstrates poor judgment, that standing against a manipulative ex-partner constitutes emotional instability." He moved to the window, gazing out at the Portland skyline his company had helped shape. This company was built on 2 principles: excellence in construction and integrity in conduct. "My father established those values, and I've upheld them for 15 years as CEO. If our clients and partners can't recognize the difference between personal compassion and professional capability, perhaps we need better clients." Reston's expression hardened. "This isn't about compassion, James. It's about perception and stability. The board has a responsibility to shareholders." "Then let me offer a solution that serves those shareholders." James returned to the table, standing rather than sitting. I'll step aside as project lead on Baldwin Tower. Promote Michael Chen to that position. He's more than ready. This gives you a public leadership transition without disrupting the entire organization. The compromise created visible division among the board members. Some nodded approval while others frowned, having clearly expected James to resign completely. Diane spoke first. That's insufficient, James. We're proposing you take a leave of absence while these personal matters resolve. The board would name an interim CEO. No, the single word carried the full weight of James's authority. I built this company from a regional player to a national competitor. I've quadrupled revenue in 15 years while maintaining the highest ethical standards in the industry. If the board wants me out, you'll need to vote me out formally. He knew they lacked the votes for such a drastic measure. Most board members were longtime allies or friends of his father. They might press for compromise under pressure, but few would support outright removal. Reston recognized the stalemate. We're not enemies, James. We're trying to protect what you've built. At minimum, consider accepting the promotion to chairman. Step away from day-to-day operations while maintaining strategic oversight. It would satisfy concerned investors while preserving your leadership legacy. The offer tempted James more than he wanted to admit. Chairman of the board meant fewer 60-hour weeks, more time with Ethan, with Rebecca and Lily. Time to build the family that was tentatively forming. I'll consider it, he conceded, but not as a reaction to pressure from someone like Daniel Reed. Give me 2 weeks to present a transition plan on my terms. The meeting continued for another hour, discussing the Baldwin Tower timeline and financial projections, with Michael Chen joining remotely. Throughout, James maintained professional composure while inwardly seething at Daniel's escalating campaign against him. The man had progressed from threats to active sabotage, using business connections to strike at James's livelihood. As the meeting concluded, Diane approached him privately. I've known you since you were in college, James. This isn't just about business for you anymore, is it? This woman and her daughter, they've become important. James considered deflecting, but opted for honesty with this longtime family friend. They have. More important than I expected. Diane's expression softened. Your father would have done exactly what you did that night in the rain. Sarah, too. She squeezed his arm gently. Just be careful. Men like Daniel Reed fight dirty when they feel threatened. And from what I hear, he has reason to feel very threatened by you. James drove home with Diane's warning echoing in his mind. He'd underestimated Reed's vindictiveness and reach. The custody battle was expanding into an attack on multiple fronts: personal, professional, and now financial. Each move was calculated to pressure James into stepping away from Rebecca and Lily. The house was quiet when he arrived home earlier than expected after the truncated meeting. He found Rebecca in Sarah's old studio, which had recently become her workspace for clinic documentation. She looked up, surprised by his presence. The meeting ended early, he explained, loosening his tie. Not exactly as planned. Rebecca immediately sensed his tension. What happened? James described the board's proposition and Daniel's behind-the-scenes maneuvering. With each detail, Rebecca's expression shifted from concern to guilt to determination. He's using me to destroy everything you've built. Her voice tightened with restrained anger. This is what Daniel does: identifies what matters to people and systematically dismantles it. I've seen it before. He won't succeed. James crossed to her, taking her hands in his. The board can't force me out. They're just rattled by the negative publicity. Rebecca wasn't reassured. This is my fault. I should never have brought these problems into your life. Lily and I should stop. James's tone was gentle but firm. We've had this conversation, Rebecca. You're not leaving. We're facing this together. Before she could respond, his phone chimed with a text from Gloria. Something about Ethan's school calling, he murmured, reading the message. We need to pick him up early. They arrived at Westmont Academy to find Ethan sitting alone outside the principal's office, his face tear-streaked and defiant. Principal Winters, a stern woman in her 50s, ushered them into her office where Lily waited with her teacher. Mr. Sullivan, Ms. Collins, the principal began. We had an incident during recess today. Ethan physically attacked another student. James stared at his son in disbelief. Ethan had never been aggressive. If anything, he'd been the target of bullying due to his quiet nature and health restrictions. Ethan spoke before either adult could respond. Tyler said Lily wasn't really my sister. He said she and Rebecca were just living with us because they were homeless and Dad felt sorry for them. His small hands balled into fists at the memory. Then he said Dad would send them away soon, just like he sends away the cleaning lady when she's done. The cruel words hung in the air, revealing how their unusual household appeared to outsiders and how those perceptions filtered down to children. James felt a surge of protective fury both for his son's wounded heart and for Rebecca and Lily's dignity. Rebecca knelt beside both children. Violence is never the answer, Ethan, even when someone says hurtful things. But thank you for standing up for Lily. She turned to the principal. Where is this Tyler now? And where were the teachers when he was saying these things? The deflection to supervision responsibilities was skillful, shifting the conversation from Ethan's reaction to the school's failure to prevent bullying. James recognized Rebecca's nursing background in her approach, addressing the immediate issue while identifying root causes. The principal bristled at the implied criticism. Tyler is with the school counselor. His parents have been notified as well. As for supervision, our teachers can't monitor every conversation on the playground. Perhaps not, James interjected, but they should create an environment where children don't repeat harmful gossip about their classmates' families. He placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. We'll discuss appropriate responses at home, but I'd also like assurance that Tyler will receive similar guidance about respect and empathy. The meeting concluded with Ethan receiving a one-day suspension, the school's minimum consequence for physical altercations. As they drove home, the car remained silent until Lily spoke in a small voice from the back seat. Are we really a family? Or are we just staying with you until we find somewhere else? The innocent question cut through the adult complexities to the heart of their uncertain situation. James caught Rebecca's eye, seeing her struggle for an appropriate answer. Families come in all different forms, James said carefully. Some are related by blood, others by choice. What matters is that we care about each other and want to be together. So we're a choice family, Ethan declared with the simple logic of childhood. That means we chose each other, which is better than just being born together by accident. Rebecca's soft laugh broke the tension. That's actually a lovely way to look at it. James recognized the moment's importance, their first acknowledgement as a family unit, even if informally defined. Yet beneath the warmth lay awareness of how fragile their arrangement remained. Two separate legal challenges threatened to fracture their choice family before it fully formed. The following day brought the long-anticipated home visit from the court-appointed social worker. Ms. Harriet Powell arrived precisely at the scheduled time, a middle-aged woman with a practiced, neutral expression and a comprehensive checklist. She toured the house, inspected the children's rooms, and observed family interactions with analytical detachment. The formal interview began in James's study. Mrs. Powell reviewed her notes before addressing them directly. I've spoken with both petitioning parties, Mr. Reed and Mrs. Carter. They've raised specific concerns about this living arrangement. Rebecca tensed beside James on the couch. What concerns exactly? Mrs. Carter believes Mr. Sullivan's relationship with you demonstrates instability following his wife's death. She suggests he's making impulsive decisions that prioritize his emotional needs over Ethan's well-being. The social worker's tone remained clinical, presenting the accusations without endorsement. Mr. Reed contends that your relationship with Mr. Sullivan began inappropriately, possibly before your eviction, and that you're using your daughter to secure financial stability. James felt Rebecca's hand grip his at the cruel insinuation. Both allegations are completely false, he stated firmly. Ms. Powell nodded without comment. Can you explain how this household functions day-to-day, decision-making, discipline responsibilities? For the next hour, they answered increasingly personal questions about their relationship timeline, parenting approaches, and future intentions. The social worker's questions probed every aspect of their unconventional family structure, seeking inconsistencies or concerns. And what about Sarah Sullivan's memory? How do you handle that with the children? The question caught James off guard with its unexpected emotional weight. Rebecca answered before he could formulate a response. Sarah remains an important part of this family. Her photos are throughout the house. We talk about her openly with the children. Ethan shares memories with Lily. She paused, measuring her words carefully. I'm not trying to replace Ethan's mother. No one could. But children deserve all the love available to them. Ms. Powell made notes without revealing her thoughts. And the long-term plan for this arrangement is the question hung between them. They had never explicitly discussed permanence beyond the immediate crisis. We're building a future together, James answered finally. The specifics may evolve, but our commitment to providing a stable, loving home for both children is unwavering. After Ms. Powell departed with promises of a preliminary report within 2 weeks, Rebecca collapsed onto the sofa, emotionally exhausted. I felt like a specimen under a microscope. James brought her tea, a small comfort ritual they'd established over the past months. You were incredible. Honest, thoughtful, compassionate. He sat beside her, their shoulders touching, especially about Sarah. I meant every word. Rebecca's eyes met his with rare vulnerability. I think about her sometimes, what she would think of all this, whether she would approve. James considered the question that had haunted him for months. Would Sarah approve of the woman now raising her son? Of James opening his heart again? She would approve of you, he said finally. Sarah valued authenticity and kindness above all else. You have both in abundance. The moment of connection shattered with his phone's urgent ring, Diane Mercer calling outside business hours. James, I'm sorry to disturb your evening, but you need to see something immediately. Her voice carried uncharacteristic alarm. Check your email. Someone leaked portions of Sarah's will to the business press. James's blood ran cold. He opened his laptop, finding the forwarded article from the Portland Business Journal, Sullivan Construction Airface's Inheritance Controversy. The piece detailed previously private provisions in Sarah's will, specifically the clause stating that if James remarried, 30% of their joint assets would transfer to a charitable foundation dedicated to cancer research. How is this possible? Confusion mingled with anger as James scanned the article. Who would have access to the will besides immediate family and our attorney? Rebecca read over his shoulder, her expression darkening with realization. Daniel. His father was a probate attorney, and he has connections throughout the legal community. He must have gotten someone to pull the filing. She straightened, connecting pieces of a puzzle. This is why he's been so confident. He doesn't just want custody of Lily, he wants to pressure you financially. If we marry, you lose significant assets. If you choose those assets over us, I'm isolated and vulnerable again. The calculated cruelty of the strategy stunned James. He's using Sarah's death as leverage. The violation felt deeply personal, transforming his professional frustration into something rawer and more dangerous. Rebecca paced the room, her nursing instincts for crisis management evident. We need to get ahead of this. Contact your attorney tonight. Inform the board before they read it elsewhere. She paused, meeting his eyes directly. And we need to decide what this means for us. What do you mean? James stood, moving toward her. This clause complicates everything, James. Your board already questions your judgment. Now there's a financial penalty if our relationship progresses. Her voice caught slightly. I won't be the reason you lose what you and Sarah built together. James recognized the familiar pattern, Rebecca's instinct to withdraw when she felt she might burden others. It was the same protective response that had nearly driven her away months earlier. Sarah included that provision to ensure cancer research continued, not to prevent me from finding happiness again, he explained. The money means nothing compared to what we're building here. Before Rebecca could respond, James's phone rang again, his attorney, Michael Peterson, returning his urgent call. The conversation confirmed their fears. The will was public record, but someone had deliberately drawn attention to the remarriage clause. Peterson recommended immediate damage control, including a press statement, emphasizing that the charitable donation had always been part of the Sullivan family's legacy planning. Not a punitive measure. When James ended the call, Rebecca stood by the window, her posture radiating tension. Your attorney is right about the press statement, but this changes our timeline. We need to be strategic now, not emotional. James approached her cautiously. What are you suggesting? A step back from our personal relationship until both custody matters resolve. Her voice remained steady despite the evident cost of the words. We present ourselves as friends, co-parents, housemates, nothing more. It neutralizes Daniel's narrative about me using you financially and undermines Amanda's claims about your emotional judgment. The proposal felt like a retreat after months of carefully advancing toward each other. And us, the feelings between us. Rebecca turned to face him, her expression a complex mixture of determination and regret. We put them on hold, just temporarily. The children need stability more than we need. She gestured between them, unable to define what they'd begun building. James felt a visceral resistance to the suggestion. After years of emotional numbness following Sarah's death, reconnecting with those feelings through Rebecca had been transformative. The prospect of deliberately suppressing them again seemed impossible. I won't pretend, he stated firmly. Not about this. We can be discreet, professional, and public, but I won't deny what I feel for you. Their negotiated compromise emerged through hours of painful discussion, maintaining their private connection while presenting a more circumspect public image. The strategy prioritized the custody cases while protecting the fragile emotional ecosystem they'd created. The following weeks brought escalating pressure on multiple fronts. Daniel Reed intensified his campaign, giving interviews suggesting James had exploited Rebecca's vulnerable circumstances. Amanda filed additional court motions questioning James's parenting capacity while working full-time. The custody evaluations continued with increasingly intrusive psychological assessments and interviews of extended family members. At Sullivan Construction, James implemented his promised transition plan, promoting Michael Chen to Chief Operating Officer while retaining CEO responsibilities. The compromise satisfied most board members while preserving James's ultimate authority. Yet tensions remained, with Reston continuing to push for James's elevation to a less visible chairman role. Throughout this external turmoil, their household maintained a careful balance. James and Rebecca avoided public displays of affection, arriving separately at school functions, and maintaining professional distance at community events. Privately, their relationship deepened through late-night conversations after the children slept quiet moments of connection amid the storm surrounding them. One such evening found them on the terrace sharing wine beneath a star-filled schema. James had just returned from a contentious board dinner where several major investors had questioned the company's leadership stability. Reston suggested I take a 2-month sabbatical, he revealed, swirling the last of his wine. Let things settle down before the Baldwin Tower grand opening. Rebecca studied his expression in the dim outdoor lighting. Would that help? With the board, I mean, professionally perhaps. Personally. He set down his glass with deliberate care. It feels like surrender, like admitting Daniel's tactics are working. They are working, Rebecca acknowledged with painful honesty. He's isolating you professionally, creating doubt among your colleagues, straining your business relationships. It's the same playbook he used with me: identify what matters most and systematically undermine it. James reached for her hand across the table. What matters most is right here, you the children, what we're building together. Everything else is just infrastructure. Rebecca's laugh carried a hint of wonder. A construction metaphor, really. Occupational hazard. His smile faded as he considered their situation. The problem is that Daniel knows exactly which supports to target. He's remarkably effective for someone so fundamentally empty. That's why he's dangerous, Rebecca cautioned. He doesn't fight for something only against others. There's no limit to what he'll do because there's nothing at his core worth protecting. James contemplated this insight, recognizing its accuracy. Daniel fought not from principle, but from pride, the need to control, to dominate, to win at any cost. Such opponents were particularly dangerous because they recognized no ethical boundaries. Their moment of connection shattered with the harsh ring of James's phone. The caller ID showed Michael Chen, who never called after hours unless absolutely necessary. James, I'm sorry to disturb you at home. Chen's normally composed voice carried unmistakable tension. There's a situation developing with the Baldwin Tower structural supports. The engineering team identified potential material failures during today's inspection. How serious? James was immediately alert, professional concerns overriding personal ones. Serious enough to require immediate assessment and potentially significant reinforcement. The chief engineer estimates 4 to 6 weeks of additional work minimum. The implications cascaded through James's mind. Further delays would extend beyond contractual deadlines, triggering penalty clauses and potentially violating loan covenants. The financial impact could reach millions. I'll be there in 30 minutes, he promised, already calculating next steps. Assemble the engineering team and call Peterson for the contractual implications. As he ended the call, Rebecca watched him with concerned understanding. The project structural issues with Baldwin Tower. I need to go in. He stood reluctance evident in his movements. I'm sorry to cut our evening short. Rebecca squeezed his hand. Go, this is important. We'll be here when you get back. The Baldwin Tower crisis consumed the next 72 hours. James worked nearly continuously alongside engineers, contractors, and legal advisors to develop a remediation plan that would address the structural concerns without bankrupting the project. The materials testing revealed disturbing inconsistencies in the concrete mixtures used for critical support columns variations that couldn't be explained by normal quality control issues. As James studied the inspection reports in the project trailer near midnight on the third day, Michael Chen approached with fresh coffee and a troubled expression. The quality control documentation was altered, Chen stated without preamble. Someone manually overrode the automated testing flags and cleared substandard concrete batches for use. James looked up sharply. Deliberate sabotage. The implications seemed outlandish, yet the evidence pointed toward intentional malfeasance. Chen nodded grimly. The system logs show the overrides came from an executive access code, but not during normal business hours. Someone with high-level credentials deliberately compromised the project. The revelation sent a chill through James that had nothing to do with the night air. Secure all documentation immediately, full digital forensics on the systems, and contact building security for access logs covering those timeframes. As Chen departed to implement these directives, James remained motionless, connecting disturbing dots. The timing aligned too perfectly with Daniel Reed's escalating campaign against him. The sabotage targeted not just the project, but James's professional reputation, his commitment to quality and safety above all else. The investigation confirmed his suspicions the following morning. Building security footage showed Marcus Jenkins, a project manager recently hired from Reed Development, accessing the quality control systems during unauthorized hours. Further investigation revealed substantial payments to Jenkins's offshore account coinciding with the tampering dates. James convened an emergency board meeting to present the evidence. The directors' reactions ranged from shock to outrage as they reviewed the documented sabotage. This goes beyond business competition, Diane stated, giving voice to the collective disbelief. This is criminal. People could have been killed if that structure had failed after occupation. Philip Reston, who had pushed hardest for James to step back, appeared visibly shaken. We need to pursue this to the fullest extent of the law. Criminal charges, civil litigation, everything. James nodded agreement while maintaining careful control of his emotions. We'll pursue legal remedies, certainly, but we also need to recognize what this represents. He surveyed the faces around the table. This wasn't just an attack on a building or a company. It was an attempt to destroy a reputation built over decades, my father's legacy and mine. The board's previously divided sentiment unified in the face of this external threat. Even Reston voiced unequivocal support for James's continued leadership through the crisis. The sabotage attempt meant to undermine James had instead solidified his position. When James finally returned home after the marathon series of meetings, he found Rebecca waiting up despite the late hour. Her face reflected both relief at his return and concern at his evident exhaustion. The news said there were structural irregularities with the Baldwin Tower. She began setting aside the medical journal she'd been reading. That sounds deliberately vague. James dropped onto the couch beside her, loosening his tie. Because corporate sabotage orchestrated by your vindictive ex doesn't make for reassuring press releases. He described the discovery, watching Rebecca's expression shift from concern to horror to cold anger. He could have killed people. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Construction workers during building. Hundreds, once it was occupied. She wrapped her arms around herself, a protective gesture. I knew Daniel was ruthless, but this crosses into something else entirely. We have evidence now, James reminded her gently. Documented financial transactions, security footage, altered records. The police have opened an investigation. Rebecca's response surprised him. It won't matter. Daniel will have insulated himself. The project manager will take the fall while Daniel maintains plausible deniability. Her certainty came from bitter experience. This is how he operates, using others as weapons while keeping his own hands clean. The assessment matched James's own suspicions. Despite the evidence against Jenkins, creating a direct link to Daniel would prove challenging without cooperation from those involved. Cooperation unlikely given the financial incentives and fear Daniel could instill. If conventional justice might fail, what alternatives do we have? James wondered aloud, strategic thinking overriding his fatigue. Rebecca hesitated, then reached for her phone. There might be another approach, not through the criminal system, but through people who know Daniel's methods firsthand. She scrolled through contacts, pausing on a name. Meredith Keaton. She was Daniel's executive assistant before me. She left suddenly about 3 years ago with a settlement and NDA. She reached out when she heard I'd left him, offering support if I ever needed it. You think she might have information? Oh, James straightened, sensing potential. More than information. Documentation, maybe. Rebecca's expression turned grimly determined. Meredith was meticulous. She kept records of everything, calls, meetings, emails. If Daniel has a pattern of using similar tactics against competitors, she would have evidence. The potential breakthrough energized them both. For months they had been reacting to Daniel's moves, constantly defensive. This represented their first opportunity to reclaim agency in the conflict. Rebecca arranged a meeting with Meredith for the following day at a quiet cafe across town. James wanted to attend, but reluctantly agreed that Rebecca should go alone. Meredith might speak more freely without the intimidating presence of a high-profile CEO. While Rebecca met with Meredith, James attended Ethan's school conference with his teacher, Mrs. Abernathy. The experienced educator spoke glowingly of Ethan's academic progress and emotional growth over the recent months. He's like a different child, she explained, reviewing his improved test scores. More confident, more engaged with peers. The change since winter has been remarkable. James absorbed the positive report with mixed emotions, praising his son's progress tempered by awareness of what had catalyzed it. He's had some significant adjustments at home, he acknowledged carefully. Mrs. Abernathy nodded with professional discretion. Children are remarkably resilient when they feel secure and loved, regardless of the specific family structure. She hesitated, then added, Ethan speaks very fondly of Ms. Collins and Lily. He told the class they're his choice family during our family heritage project. The phrase echoed in James's mind as he drove home, reinforcing his determination to protect what they'd built. His phone rang just as he pulled into the driveway, Rebecca calling from her meeting with Meredith. I have everything we need. Her voice vibrated with controlled excitement. Bank records, email archives, recorded conversations. Daniel has done this before 3 times with different competitors. Meredith documented everything as insurance against retaliation. Hope surged through James for the first time in weeks. Will she testify? Better, she's willing to provide notarized statements and all supporting documentation directly to the district attorney and the licensing board. Rebecca paused, her next words carrying weighty significance. She's been waiting years for someone willing to stand against him with enough resources and influence to succeed. The implications crystallized in James's mind. They had the means not just to defend themselves, but to end Daniel's ability to harm others. With evidence of pattern and practice, the consequences would extend beyond the Baldwin Tower incident to his entire business operation. James arrived home to find Rebecca waiting on the front steps, her expression a complex mixture of hope, determination, and underlying anxiety. The portfolio beside her contained what might be their salvation, or at least their shield against further attacks. Are you ready for this? He asked, joining her on the steps. Once we move forward with these documents, there's no going back. Daniel will retaliate however he can. Rebecca drew a deep breath, gazing out at the pristine landscaping of the estate. I've been running from Daniel's influence for months, living in fear of what he might do next. She turned to James, her expression resolute. I'm done running. Whatever comes next, we face it on our terms, not his. They sat together in momentary silence, the weight of the decision settling around them. The coming days would bring legal battles, public scrutiny, and undoubtedly new challenges from Daniel. Yet for the first time, they possessed not just defensive barriers, but offensive capabilities, truth documented and verified, ready for deployment. The custody hearing is next week, James reminded her softly. This evidence might not reach the courts in time to influence that proceeding. Rebecca nodded, having already considered this complication. That's why we need to be prepared for all outcomes. If the judge grants Daniel temporary visitation pending the criminal investigation, well, we'll handle it, James assured her, though the prospect of Lily spending mandatory time with Daniel chilled him. One battle at a time. They rose together as the sound of the school bus reached them. Ethan and Lily returning home, backpacks bouncing, animated conversation flowing between them. These moments, watching the children approach their easy companionship evident even at a distance, reinforced everything worth fighting for. They deserve better than living in a war zone, Rebecca murmured. However this ends, they need to feel secure. James took her hand, a public gesture they had avoided during recent weeks of strategic discretion. Then we end it decisively. Not just defensive moves, but a final resolution. As they welcomed the children home, fielding excited reports about school projects and playground adventures, James felt a clarity of purpose that transcended professional ambition or personal desire. This wasn't just about protecting his relationship with Rebecca or his position at Sullivan Construction. It was about creating space for these children to grow without shadows of manipulation or fear. That evening, after the children were asleep, James and Rebecca met with their attorney to review Meredith's evidence. Peterson examined each document methodically, his expression growing increasingly confident as the pattern of corporate sabotage emerged from the records. This goes well beyond civil litigation, he concluded, closing the final file. We're looking at potential federal charges, wire fraud, racketeering, conspiracy. The pattern establishes clear intent across multiple incidents. How quickly can we move? James asked, acutely aware of the custody hearing's approaching deadline. Peterson considered the question carefully. The criminal investigation will proceed at its own pace, but for the custody matter, you can file these as supplemental evidence tomorrow morning. A judge might consider a pattern of criminal behavior relevant to parental fitness. Rebecca's phone chimed with a text. Her face paled as she read the message. It's from Daniel. She turned the screen to show them, last chance to reconsider your position. Tomorrow changes everything. For all of us. The veiled threat carried ominous undertones. How had Daniel learned about Meredith's evidence so quickly? The timing suggested internal leaks or surveillance they hadn't anticipated. He's bluffing, James insisted, though uncertainty crept into his voice. He can't know what we have. Or he has something we don't know about, Rebecca countered, years of experience with Daniel's methods informing her caution. He never threatens without leverage. Peterson advised immediate security precautions, digital and physical. Whatever he's planning, we proceed with filing these documents first thing tomorrow. Better to act from strength than react from vulnerability. As Peterson departed with the evidence files safely secured, James activated the home's advanced security system and checked on the sleeping children. Both slept peacefully, unaware of the adult conflicts swirling around them. Ethan had kicked off his blankets as usual. James gently covered him before moving to Lily's room, where Rebecca stood watching her daughter sleep. She looks like my mother, Rebecca whispered, careful not to wake the child. Same profile, same determined little chin. She brushed a strand of hair from Lily's forehead with infinite tenderness. I promised myself she'd never know fear or insecurity the way I did growing up. Yet here we are in the middle of a battle zone. James stood beside her, their shoulders touching in silent solidarity. Not for much longer. One way or another, this ends soon. They retired to the master bedroom, the day's emotional and strategic intensity, leaving them drained yet paradoxically alert. Sleep seemed impossible with tomorrow's uncertainties looming. Rebecca sat at the window seat, gazing out at the moonlit garden. Whatever happens tomorrow, James, I need you to know something. She turned to face him, vulnerability and strength intertwined in her expression. These months with you, they've changed me. Shown me what partnership can be when it's built on respect instead of control. Whatever Daniel does next, he can't take that away. James crossed to her, taking both her hands in his. Nothing changes between us. Not tomorrow, not ever. He lifted her fingers to his lips. We are stronger than his schemes, Rebecca. Stronger together than either of us alone. Their embrace carried the weight of shared battles and shared hope, a moment of connection that transcended the external threats surrounding them. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it united. Neither could have anticipated just how severely that unity would be tested when morning came. Morning arrived with unexpected silence. No phone calls, no texts, no ominous warnings. James and Rebecca moved through their routine with heightened vigilance, both sensing the calm before an inevitable storm. Peterson had filed Meredith's evidence with the district attorney's office at the courthouse opening, setting in motion legal machinery that would be difficult for even Daniel to halt. Still nothing. Rebecca glanced at James's phone as they prepared the children for school. The absence of reaction seemed more concerning than an immediate threat. James shook his head, checking his email once more. Nothing from Daniel, nothing from the board. It's too quiet. They decided to maintain normal routines despite their unease driving the children to school together rather than using the bus. James lingered at the drop-off, watching until Ethan and Lily disappeared safely through the building's doors. "I'll pick them up this afternoon," Rebecca confirmed, squeezing his hand. "The clinic director approved my schedule change. I'll be waiting when school dismisses." The reassurance should have comforted him, yet anxiety persisted as they separated for their workdays. James drove toward downtown Portland, his mind churning through scenarios and countermeasures. Daniel's silence suggested calculation rather than surrender, a strategic pause while positioning new weapons. James had barely reached Sullivan Construction headquarters when his assistant Melissa intercepted him in the lobby, her expression taut with concern. "James, you need to see this immediately." She handed him a tablet displaying the breaking news headline from the Portland Business Journal: Sullivan Construction CEO accused of bribing public officials for building permits. The accompanying article detailed allegations that James had authorized payments to expedite permits for multiple projects, including Baldwin Tower. An anonymous whistleblower claimed to possess documentation of irregular payments funneled through shell companies to influence zoning boards and building inspectors. "It's completely fabricated," James stated, scrolling through the incendiary claims. The strategy was apparent. Daniel couldn't stop the criminal investigation based on Meredith's evidence, so he'd created a parallel scandal to undermine James's credibility and distract authorities. "The board's assembling in the conference room," Melissa informed him. "All members were called in for an emergency session. Mr. Reston is already making statements to select investors trying to contain the damage." James entered the conference room to find the board in disarray, divided between those demanding immediate answers and others counseling caution against obvious sabotage. Philip Reston stood at the head of the table, attempting to maintain order while simultaneously fielding calls from panicked shareholders. James Reston acknowledged his arrival with visible relief. "These allegations are completely false and strategically timed." James completed the thought, addressing the entire board. "Yesterday, we filed substantial evidence of corporate sabotage against Daniel Reed with the district attorney. This morning, these fabricated bribery claims emerge. The connection should be obvious to everyone in this room." Diane Mercer nodded agreement. "It's a transparent attempt to create doubt about James's ethical standards precisely when Reed faces serious legal jeopardy." Not everyone appeared convinced. Thomas Green, who had previously sided with Reston on leadership transition questions, leaned forward skeptically. "The timing may be suspicious, but we can't simply dismiss allegations of this magnitude. The journal claims their source has documentation." "Manufactured documentation," James countered firmly. "Every Sullivan project undergoes multiple compliance audits and independent inspections. We maintain meticulous records precisely to prevent such accusations. Our permit processes are transparent and documented in exhaustive detail." The debate continued with increasing intensity until James's phone vibrated with an urgent call from Peterson. Stepping out to take it, James found himself facing even worse news. "The custody hearing has been moved up," Peterson reported grimly. "Reed's attorney filed an emergency motion this morning, citing new evidence of immediate concern for the minor child's welfare. Judge Watkins granted it. We're now scheduled for 2:00 p.m. today instead of next week." James processed the information with growing alarm. What new evidence? They're being deliberately vague in the filing, but the timing suggests it's connected to these bribery allegations. "Reed is positioning you as ethically compromised, possibly criminally liable, and therefore an unsuitable influence in his daughter's life." The coordinated attack now came into focus. Daniel had timed his counteroffensive, precisely using the business allegations to create leverage in the custody matter, while simultaneously undercutting James's corporate position. The strategy targeted every vulnerability simultaneously. "I need to inform Rebecca immediately," James decided, already calculating timeline adjustments. "We'll meet you at the courthouse at 1:30. When James called Rebecca with the update, her reaction reflected more resignation than surprise. He's always operated this way, simultaneous pressure from multiple directions until his target collapses. I should have expected this. We're not collapsing, James assured her, his determination hardening with each new challenge. Peterson is preparing our response now. The judge needs to see these bribery claims for what they are, a desperate diversion tactic. Rebecca's momentary silence carried volumes. I'll meet you at the courthouse. I need to arrange emergency coverage for my afternoon appointments. James returned to the boardroom where the crisis management discussion had escalated to debate about a formal company statement. He addressed his executive team directly, outlining immediate action steps. Michael will implement our media response protocol. Diane will contact our major clients directly to provide reassurance. Thomas, I need your team to compile comprehensive permit documentation for all active projects ready for immediate inspection. Philip Reston cleared his throat pointedly. James, given the sensitivity of these allegations, perhaps it would be appropriate for you to temporarily. I will not step aside based on fabricated claims. James interrupted, his tone leaving no room for debate. This company has operated with absolute integrity since my father founded it 30 years ago. I won't validate false accusations by acting as though they merit serious consideration. The declaration silenced further discussion of leadership transition, at least temporarily. With immediate response delegations assigned, James left to prepare for the accelerated custody hearing, his mind shifting focus from corporate to family priorities. The courthouse corridors hummed with subdued activity as James met Rebecca and Peterson outside courtroom 3B. Rebecca's professional composure appeared intact, though the strain showed in the tightness around her eyes and the way she unconsciously twisted her clinic ID badge. Daniel's already inside with his attorney, Peterson informed them quietly. Amanda arrived separately. She's been granted observer status since her petition regarding Ethan remains active, though separate. Rebecca straightened her shoulders at this news. So we're facing both challenges simultaneously. Perfect. They entered the courtroom to find Daniel Reed already positioned at the respondent's table, immaculately dressed in a conservative suit that projected responsible stability. His carefully neutral expression betrayed no emotion when Rebecca entered, though his eyes tracked her movements with predatory focus. Judge Eleanor Watkins, a veteran family court jurist known for her no-nonsense approach, called the emergency hearing to order precisely at 2:00 p.m. I've reviewed the petitioner's motion for emergency modification of visitation and temporary custody arrangements. She began without preamble. Mr. Norwood, please explain the basis for this accelerated timeline. Daniel's attorney rose, a silver-haired man whose folksy manner belied his reputation as one of Portland's most aggressive custody lawyers. Your Honor, new information has emerged regarding the living environment where my client's daughter currently resides. Mr. Sullivan, who has been housing Ms. Collins and the minor child, is now the subject of a criminal investigation involving alleged bribery of public officials. Judge Watkins's expression remained impassive. And how does this relate to the child's immediate welfare, beyond obvious concerns about moral character and potential criminal exposure? Norwood continued smoothly. We have evidence that Mr. Sullivan's relationship with Ms. Collins began under ethically questionable circumstances that directly impact her fitness as custodial parent. Rebecca tensed beside James, her hand finding his beneath the table in an instinctive gesture of mutual support. Peterson rose immediately to object. Your Honor, counsel is making inflammatory allegations without foundation. Mr. Sullivan is not under criminal investigation. Unsubstantiated claims published in a newspaper do not constitute an investigation. The judge acknowledged this distinction with a slight nod. Mr. Norwood, please restrict your statements to verifiable facts rather than speculation. Norwood adjusted seamlessly. Of course, Your Honor. The verifiable facts include documented financial support provided by Mr. Sullivan to Ms. Collins immediately following their first meeting, raising questions about the nature of their arrangement and Ms. Collins's motivations in maintaining custody. The insinuation hung poisonously in the air that Rebecca had essentially traded custody access for financial security, a claim as devastating as it was false. James felt Rebecca's hand tighten around his, her knuckles white with restrained emotion. When Peterson rose again to address the court, his normally measured tone carried an edge of controlled outrage. Your Honor, these allegations constitute character assassination, not legitimate custody concerns. The documented timeline of events clearly shows Mr. Sullivan provided temporary housing to Ms. Collins and her daughter during a housing crisis, an act of basic human decency, not impropriety. The procedural arguments continued for nearly an hour, with each side presenting increasingly technical legal positions. Throughout, Daniel maintained an expression of concerned paternal interest, occasionally shaking his head sadly at particularly heated exchanges, as though pained by the conflict. Finally, Judge Watkins raised her hand for silence. I've heard enough procedural arguments. What I haven't heard is meaningful discussion of the child's best interests. She turned toward Rebecca directly. Ms. Collins, when was the last time your daughter had contact with her father? Rebecca answered with careful precision. Lily has had no contact with Mr. Reed since we left our previous apartment approximately 6 months ago. Prior to that, Mr. Reed's interaction with her was limited to occasional brief visits, typically less than 1 hour per month. And why is that? The judge pressed. Mr. Reed showed minimal interest in parenting involvement throughout Lily's life. He never attended doctor appointments, school meetings, or participated in daily care routines. Rebecca maintained eye contact with the judge, her voice steady despite the tension visible in her posture. Daniel's attorney interjected smoothly. Your Honor, my client's limited involvement stemmed from Ms. Collins's restrictive behavior, not lack of interest. Mr. Reed has consistently expressed desire for a meaningful relationship with his daughter. Judge Watkins considered this claim with evident skepticism. Mr. Reed, what was the date of your daughter's last medical appointment? Daniel hesitated, unprepared for the direct question. I don't have the exact date, Your Honor. Rebecca handled those matters. Her pediatrician's name, another hesitation. Dr. Johnson, I believe. Incorrect, the judge noted. According to the medical records submitted with the original petition, the child sees Dr. Elaine Chen at Portland Pediatric Associates. She made a notation before continuing. What grade is your daughter in currently, Mr. Reed? First grade, Daniel answered with more confidence. Her teacher's name? The confidence faltered. I don't have that information immediately available. Judge Watkins's expression remained neutral, but her line of questioning made her assessment increasingly apparent. After several more basic questions about Lily's life that Daniel struggled to answer accurately, she turned to more substantive matters. I've reviewed the supplemental evidence filed this morning regarding Mr. Reed's business practices and potential criminal liability. Her gaze shifted between the parties. While corporate misconduct allegations typically fall outside family court considerations, a pattern of documented ethical violations may indeed speak to character issues relevant to parenting capacity. Daniel's composed facade cracked slightly at the reference to Meredith's evidence. He leaned toward his attorney, whispering urgently as Judge Watkins continued. Similarly, unsubstantiated allegations against Mr. Sullivan require verification before influencing custody determinations. This court will not be used as a battlefield for parallel business disputes. After further deliberation and testimony, including a private conversation with Lily in chambers, Judge Watkins delivered her interim ruling. Pending full evaluation of the evidence presented today, primary physical custody remains with Ms. Collins. However, this court recognizes the child's right to a relationship with both parents when safe and appropriate. She fixed Daniel with a direct gaze. Mr. Reed, you are granted supervised visitation twice monthly to be conducted at the Family Connection Center with professional monitoring present. These visits will begin following completion of a parenting class program and psychological evaluation. The limited supervised visitation represented a significant victory for Rebecca, though the mere prospect of forcing Lily into any contact with Daniel clearly troubled her. Daniel's expression darkened momentarily before he reassumed his mask of reasonable concern. As they exited the courthouse, Rebecca released a shuddering breath. She saw through him, not completely, but enough. It's a start, James agreed, guiding her toward the parking structure. Supervised visitation with prerequisites creates time for the criminal investigation to progress, for Meredith's evidence to be fully examined. Rebecca nodded, though her expression remained troubled. He won't stop, James. This just shifts his focus to new tactics. Her prediction proved accurate sooner than either anticipated. As they approached James's car, a television news crew intercepted them, microphones extended. Mr. Sullivan, can you comment on allegations that your relationship with Ms. Collins influenced city approvals for Sullivan construction projects? The reporter pressed forward aggressively. camera light illuminating their startled expressions. James maintained composure, placing himself slightly ahead of Rebecca to shield her from the intrusive lens. Those allegations are categorically false and appear timed to distract from evidence of corporate sabotage filed with authorities yesterday. Sullivan Construction has operated with absolute integrity throughout its history, as public records clearly demonstrate. His measured response seemed to disappoint the reporter, who pivoted to a more personal angle. Ms. Collins' sources close to your ex-partner suggest your custody arrangement with Mr. Aram. Sullivan was financially motivated. Would you care to address those claims? Rebecca's expression hardened professional poise, giving way to genuine indignation. That characterization is both false and offensive. I'm a licensed healthcare professional who has always prioritized my daughter's well-being above all else. These baseless accusations reflect desperation, not reality. They navigated past the news crew to reach the car where Peterson waited with updates on the parallel legal proceedings. The DA's office has assigned a senior prosecutor to review Meredith's evidence. They're taking it seriously, especially given this coordinated counterattack. As they drove away, James received an urgent text from Michael Chen. Board reconvening at 5 p.m. Critical vote scheduled. Your presence requested immediately. The corporate battlefront demanded attention even as the personal one continued raging. James dropped Rebecca at the children's school for pickup, reluctantly separating to address the board crisis. I'll meet you at home as soon as possible. Extra security is already in place. Sullivan Construction's boardroom had transformed in his absence, with legal counsel now flanking Reston and several senior directors. Their expressions ranged from apologetic to resolute, and as James entered, suggesting the vote's nature before anyone spoke. Reston began without ceremony. James, in light of today's developments, the board has convened to vote on temporary leadership reassignment. While we all believe in your integrity, the company requires operational stability during this crisis period. The anticipated coup had arrived, accelerated by Daniel's manufactured scandal. James surveyed the faces around the table, identifying allies and opponents with practiced ease. And the proposed arrangement: you would assume chairman status immediately, with executive functions transferring to Michael Chen as acting CEO for a 90-day period, or until these allegations are resolved, whichever comes first. The proposal matched James's earlier compromise suggestion, yet coming now under duress, it carried different implications. Accepting would appear as retreat, potentially validating the false allegations. Refusing might trigger a more dramatic removal attempt. James considered his response carefully, weighing corporate responsibilities against personal principles. Before voting, I'd like to address the board directly regarding the actual timeline and evidence. For the next 30 minutes, James methodically detailed Daniel Reed's escalating campaign from Baldwin Tower sabotage through the manufactured bribery claims. He presented documentation of Sullivan Construction's permit processes, transparent financial records, and the counter-investigation already underway. This vote isn't about operational stability, he concluded firmly. It's about whether Sullivan Construction stands by its principles when challenged or capitulates to calculated intimidation. My father built this company on integrity that doesn't waver under pressure. I've maintained that standard throughout my tenure. His passionate defense shifted the room's atmosphere, causing several previously determined directors to exchange uncertain glances. Diane Mercer spoke into the momentary silence. I move to table this vote pending the preliminary findings from our internal audit, which should be available within 48 hours. The procedural motion passed narrowly, granting James a temporary reprieve, though not a definitive victory. As the meeting dispersed, Reston approached him privately. You've bought time, James, but the pressure from major shareholders, it continues mounting. They're concerned about share value, not principle. Then we address those concerns directly, James decided. Schedule an emergency investor call for tomorrow morning. Full transparency, comprehensive response to all allegations, clear timeline for resolution. The corporate crisis temporarily contained, James drove toward home with mounting concern for Rebecca and the children. The day's events represented coordinated escalation across all fronts, legal, professional, and now potentially physical, if Daniel's desperation continued growing. He arrived to find the house secure but tense, with Rebecca pacing the kitchen while monitoring the children playing in the adjacent family room. Her relief at his arrival was palpable. The school called just after I picked them up. Someone claiming to be Daniel's assistant tried to collect Lily early, saying there was a family emergency. Thankfully, the administration followed protocols and verified with me before releasing her. The attempted circumvention of court-ordered supervised visitation represented a dangerous escalation. Did they identify the person? A woman they didn't recognize. She left when they insisted on contacting me. Rebecca's voice remained steady despite the obvious distress in her eyes. James, he's getting desperate, which makes him more dangerous, not less. That evening, after ensuring the children were settled with normal routines, despite the abnormal tension surrounding them, James and Rebecca retreated to his study to assess their position and options. Peterson had arranged additional legal and physical security measures, while the DA's investigation into Meredith's evidence proceeded with increasing momentum. "We've survived the first counterattack," James observed, studying the complex situation map they'd created on his whiteboard. "But Daniel's invested too much to retreat now. There will be additional pressure, likely targeting new vulnerabilities." Rebecca traced connections between the mapped events, her nursing training evident in her systematic analysis. "The bribery allegations create questioning around your business ethics. The custody hearing attempted to separate us. The school incident shows willingness to directly target Lily. Each attack focuses on something different, but interconnected. Divide and isolate." James identified the strategy. Classic predatory behavior. Separate potential allies create conflicting priorities, force impossible choices. Their strategic planning continued late into the evening, interrupted finally by Ethan's appearance in the doorway, pajama-clad and troubled. "Dad, is everything okay? You and Rebecca look worried." The innocent question carried complicated implications. How much should they explain? How much should remain adult concern? James motioned his son closer, making room beside him on the leather couch. "We're handling some complicated grown-up problems, buddy. Nothing for you to worry about." Ethan's expression suggested he remained unconvinced. "Is it about Lily's dad wanting to take her away? I heard you talking about court." Rebecca exchanged a concerned glance with James before joining them. "Ethan, sometimes adults disagree about important things, and special people called judges help decide what's best for everyone, and especially children. Like King Solomon in the Bible story." Ethan's question revealed unexpected insight. "My Sunday school teacher said he figured out who the real mother was because she'd rather give up her baby than let it get hurt." The biblical reference struck Rebecca visibly, her composure momentarily fracturing. "That's very similar, yes. The judge is trying to figure out what's best for Lily." Ethan considered this with solemn concentration. "Lily belongs with us. We're her choice family now." The simple declaration from a child's perspective crystallized everything at stake, not just legal custody or business reputation, but the fundamental bonds forming between these four people who had found each other through chance and choice. After reassuring Ethan and returning him to bed, James and Rebecca continued their strategy session with renewed determination. The unexpected interruption had clarified their priorities beyond legal and corporate defenses. "We need to end this definitively," James decided. "Not just survive each attack, but remove Daniel's capacity to continue this campaign altogether." Rebecca studied him with cautious hope, how he's insulated himself from direct legal consequences. The corporate sabotage evidence might eventually lead to charges, but that could take months or years. "Then we change the battlefield." James outlined an approach that leveraged their respective strengths rather than continuing to defend on Daniel's chosen terrain. He's attacking through business and legal channels because those are familiar to him, but his actual vulnerability lies elsewhere. The strategy they developed that night represented their first truly offensive posture after months of reactive defense. It would require precision timing, coordinated execution, and significant risk, but offered potential for resolution rather than endless conflict. Implementation began the following morning with James's investor call. Rather than merely defending against the bribery allegations, he systematically presented evidence of Daniel Reed's coordinated campaign, including the documented sabotage and witness testimony. The transparent approach reassured major shareholders while repositioning the narrative from defensive to proactive. Rebecca simultaneously executed her portion of their strategy meeting with selected journalists who had covered healthcare industry issues previously. She provided documentation of Daniel's past pattern of retaliatory behavior toward former partners and business associates, establishing context for the current situation while carefully avoiding statements that might violate confidentiality agreements. By mid-afternoon, their coordinated approach had shifted media coverage noticeably. Headlines evolved from "Sullivan Construction CEO faces bribery allegations" to more nuanced framings like "Corporate rivalry escalates, Sullivan claims coordinated sabotage campaign." Daniel's response came swiftly as anticipated. His attorney filed an emergency motion claiming Rebecca had violated confidentiality provisions in their separation agreement by speaking with journalists. The legal maneuver targeted Rebecca, directly attempting to separate her from James's protective resources. They had prepared for this reaction. Peterson filed an immediate counter-motion documenting Daniel's prior violations of the same agreement, including his public characterizations of Rebecca during the custody process. The legal parry neutralized the immediate threat while maintaining their strategic momentum. The corporate front stabilized further when Sullivan Construction's internal audit confirmed no irregularities in the permit processes for any projects, including Baldwin Tower. The comprehensive report, prepared by an independent accounting firm, systematically refuted each bribery allegation with documented evidence of proper procedures and transparent transactions. With Daniel's public attacks increasingly discredited, James and Rebecca implemented the final phase of their strategy, a direct approach that bypassed the legal and corporate battlegrounds entirely. 4 days after the emergency custody hearing, James received a text message from a blocked number. "Electrical room, Baldwin Tower construction site, 8 p.m. tonight. Come alone if you want this resolved. No police, no lawyers." The message matched their expectations precisely. Daniel, finding his usual tactics neutralized, was shifting to direct confrontation. The specified location, isolated under construction, accessible only to authorized personnel, suggested he intended an intimidation approach rather than genuine negotiation. "It's too dangerous," Rebecca insisted when James showed her the message. "He's desperate and cornered. There's no predicting what he might do." James understood her concerns, yet recognized the opportunity within the risk. "This is what we anticipated," Daniel, abandoning complex schemes for direct action when those schemes failed. "It's our best chance to end this decisively." Their contingency planning had included this scenario. James would accept the meeting, but with significant security modifications unknown to Daniel. Michael Chen would monitor from the construction office using the site's security system. 2 private security personnel would maintain positions near the electrical room, close enough to intervene if necessary. "I don't like this," Rebecca repeated as evening approached. "There are too many variables, too many things that could go wrong." James drew her close, recognizing the fear beneath her objections. "We can't continue in perpetual defensive posture, Rebecca. The children deserve resolution stability. So do we." The Baldwin Tower construction site stood eerily silent as James arrived that evening, most workers having departed hours earlier. Security lighting cast harsh shadows across partially completed structures, creating a landscape of industrial angles and concealed corners. James entered through the main construction entrance, using his executive access card, while alerting Michael to his arrival via text. The electrical room was located on the second sub-level, accessible only by temporary construction elevators or emergency stairs. He chose the stairs, maintaining situational awareness as he descended into increasingly isolated territory. The basement levels smelled of fresh concrete and electrical components, the air cooler than the summer evening above. The electrical room door stood partially open, light spilling into the otherwise darkened corridor. James paused, listening for movement or conversation that might indicate an ambush, rather than the expected one-on-one confrontation. "I know you're out there, Sullivan," Daniel's voice echoed from within the room, carrying artificial confidence. "Let's get this over with." James entered to find Daniel Reed standing beside the main electrical panel, dressed incongruously in an expensive suit despite the dusty construction environment. His carefully maintained facade had deteriorated since the courtroom appearance, his complexion, sallow eyes shadowed with fatigue or stress. "Dramatic setting," James observed, neutrally, maintaining distance while assessing potential threats. "Though I suppose a man who arranged concrete sabotage might feel comfortable in the building he tried to compromise." Daniel's expression flickered between anger and calculation. "Interesting theory. Difficult to prove, though the attempt has certainly been costly for you." He gestured vaguely upward. Your board's losing confidence. Major contracts suspended. Reputation questions multiplying. All because you couldn't mind your own business. Rebecca and Lily became my business the night I found them abandoned in the rain. James maintained calm, recognizing Daniel's attempt to provoke emotional reaction. Everything that's happened since stems from your inability to accept that simple reality. Reality, Daniel's laugh carried brittle edges. Here's reality, Sullivan. You've temporarily inconvenienced me. I've nearly destroyed what took you decades to build. Your company's stock has dropped 17% in a week. Your board's actively seeking your replacement. Your reputation's permanently tarnished regardless of investigation outcomes. The assessment contained enough truth to sting, though James recognized the exaggerations intended to demoralize. If that's true, why arrange this meeting? Why not simply watch the destruction you've orchestrated? Daniel moved closer, maintaining artificial casualness, though tension radiated from his posture. Because I'm offering a reasonable solution, a business proposition between pragmatic men. I'm listening. James remained outwardly impassive while mentally recording every word for potential future use. It's straightforward. You and Rebecca end your relationship immediately, publicly, and definitively. She and Lily move into housing I'll provide separate from you and your son. You issue a statement acknowledging personal mistakes that created appearance of impropriety in business matters. I withdraw all allegations and legal actions, allowing your company to recover gradually. The audacity of the proposal momentarily stunned James. After everything, the sabotage, false allegations, manipulation of legal systems, Daniel still believed he maintained negotiating leverage. And if I decline, Daniel's expression hardened into something closer to his true nature. Then I continue until there's nothing left. Not your company, not your reputation, not your relationship. I have resources you haven't begun to imagine, Sullivan. This is just the opening phase. You're offering peace terms as though you're winning, James observed quietly. That suggests you haven't fully assessed your actual position. Daniel's confidence wavered slightly. My position, I'm not the one losing everything I've built. Aren't you, James countered. The district attorney has Meredith's evidence. The engineering reports document deliberate sabotage. Your attempted end run around supervised visitation was reported to family court yesterday. Your reputation among business associates is deteriorating as these connections become apparent. With each point, Daniel's composure fractured further, the controlled businessman facade crumbling to reveal the cornered predator beneath. Circumstantial connections. Nothing direct. Nothing that will stick. That was true yesterday, James acknowledged. It changed approximately 3 hours ago when Marcus Jenkins accepted a plea arrangement. He's providing comprehensive testimony about your instructions regarding Baldwin Tower in exchange for reduced charges. The information detonated visibly across Daniel's expression. Shock, then calculation, then something approaching panic. You're bluffing. Jenkins wouldn't. His statement is being transcribed at the DA's office as we speak. The claim contained calculated uncertainty. Jenkins had indeed begun cooperation discussions, though formal arrangements remain pending. Corporate sabotage, conspiracy, witness tampering. Each charge carries substantial prison time. Daniel moved with unexpected speed, closing distance between them with desperate intensity. Listen to me very carefully. This isn't over. Even if Jenkins talks, there are contingencies in place. Things will happen that can't be undone. Rebecca knows what I'm capable of when provoked. The threat's deliberate vagueness carried more menace than specific details might have. James maintained outward calm while tension coiled within. Are you threatening physical harm, Daniel? Because that would transform this situation from corporate and custody disputes into something far more serious. I'm stating facts. Daniel hissed, his control persona completely abandoned. You think you've won. You have no idea what losing everything does to a man, no idea what it makes possible. The escalation confirmed James's assessment of Daniel's deteriorating stability. This wasn't calculated intimidation, but genuine volatility, a dangerous evolution requiring immediate containment. This conversation is over. James stepped back, creating distance while retrieving his phone. I'm activating site security. You're trespassing on a closed construction zone, which constitutes criminal violation independent of our other disputes. Daniel's expression transformed into something unrecognizable. Rage and fear is intertwined beyond rational constraint. You self-righteous bastard. You think you can replace me? That she'll stay once you're not useful anymore. His hand moved toward his jacket pocket with alarming purpose. Some problems can't be managed away, Sullivan. The security personnel James had positioned nearby responded to his text alert entering the electrical room with professional efficiency. Their presence diffused the immediate physical threat, though Daniel's expression promised continued conflict. Mr. Reed is leaving the premises, James informed the security team calmly. Please escort him to the exit and document this unauthorized access in your incident report. Daniel maintained rigid composure as the guards approached his earlier volatility masked beneath cold fury. Congratulations, Sullivan. You've just guaranteed this ends with maximum damage to everyone involved. He straightened his jacket methodically. Some men can't be intimidated or bought. Remember that in the coming days. The ominous parting statement lingered as security escorted Daniel from the building. James remained in the electrical room, momentarily processing the confrontation and its implications. Daniel's deterioration from calculated operator to volatile threat represented both opportunity and danger, increasing the likelihood of legal consequences, while simultaneously raising the risk of unpredictable action. James drove home with heightened vigilance, alerting the security team at his residence to maintain maximum awareness. The house lights glowed welcomingly through gathering dusk as he arrived, momentarily dispelling the darkness of the encounter. He found Rebecca in the kitchen, her anxious expression immediately shifting to relief at his appearance. "You're okay, what happened?" James recounted the confrontation in detail while Rebecca listened with growing concern. "His behavior sounds increasingly erratic," she observed when he finished. "That's when he's most dangerous. When he feels cornered, when traditional tactics fail." "The security modifications are complete," James confirmed, referring to the enhanced systems they'd implemented throughout the property. Rebecca nodded. "Finished this afternoon. The children's rooms have additional monitors, and Gloria's been briefed on emergency protocols." Her professional demeanor faltered slightly. "James, I've never seen him this desperate, not even during our worst conflicts." "Because he's never truly lost before," James reasoned. "His usual methods rely on intimidation, financial pressure, and social manipulation. When those fail, he lacks contingency strategies." They checked on the sleeping children before retiring each bedroom visit, affirming the stakes in their ongoing battle. Ethan slept surrounded by dinosaur models and science books, one arm thrown dramatically across his pillow in unconscious abandon. Lily curled protectively around her favorite stuffed rabbit, her expression peaceful, despite the turmoil surrounding her young life. In the master bedroom, Rebecca stood by the window overlooking the darkened garden, lost in troubling thoughts. What if this never truly ends? What if Daniel's need for control and revenge just continues indefinitely? James joined her at the window, his reflection appearing beside hers in the glass. "Every conflict eventually resolves, Rebecca, either through victory, defeat, or mutual exhaustion. Daniel's resources aren't unlimited, and his support network shrinks with each exposed scheme." "I hope you're right." Her doubtful tone suggested experience contradicting his optimism. "He's sacrificed business relationships, professional reputation, even potential criminal charges, rather than accept our situation. That suggests pathological determination rather than rational self-interest." They retired to bed with the conversation unresolved, the house secure yet somehow vulnerable beneath the weight of Daniel's parting threat. Sleep came fitfully, for both interrupted by minor household sounds that suddenly seemed potentially significant. James woke at dawn feeling unrested yet determined. The morning routine proceeded with deliberate normalcy: breakfast preparation, school lunches, gentle reminders about homework, and after-school activities. The children absorbed the adults' tension, despite efforts to shield them, their behavior slightly subdued though resilient. As James prepared to leave for the office, his phone buzzed with a call from Peterson. The attorney's normally measured tone carried unmistakable urgency. "James, we have a situation developing. Daniel Reed was arrested an hour ago attempting to access your property through the service entrance. Security detained him until police arrived." The news simultaneously relieved and alarmed James. "Was he armed?" "No weapons found, though his vehicle contains surveillance equipment and building schematics. He's being charged with criminal trespassing, violation of restraining order, and attempted breaking and entering. Bail hearing this afternoon. James relayed the information to Rebecca, whose reaction mixed vindication with increased concern. This validates everything we've said about his behavior, but also confirms my worst fears about his instability. They decided to maintain normal schedules despite the development with enhanced security accompanying Rebecca and the children throughout the day. James proceeded to Sullivan Construction headquarters, where the corporate situation continued stabilizing following the internal audit's definitive refutation of bribery allegations. The board meeting that afternoon reflected dramatically shifted dynamics. With Daniel Reed now facing criminal charges beyond the corporate sabotage investigation, the manufactured crisis surrounding James's leadership had largely evaporated. Philip Reston, formerly leading the transition pressure, now emphasized continuity and stability. The investor community responds positively to our transparency and decisive action, Reston reported, reviewing real-time financial analytics. Share price recovering steadily since this morning's market opening. The Baldwin Tower reinforcement timeline satisfies major stakeholders, and Michael's leadership on implementation has been exemplary. James acknowledged the positive developments while maintaining perspective. The immediate crisis appears contained, but we should anticipate continued volatility until all legal matters conclude. Both the corporate sabotage investigation and Daniel Reed's criminal proceedings will generate periodic media attention. The board unanimously approved James's continued leadership, with several members offering belated apologies for questioning his judgment during the manufactured crisis. The corporate battlefield had stabilized definitively in his favor. As the meeting concluded, James received urgent messages from both Rebecca and Peterson. Daniel's bail hearing had resulted in unexpected developments. The judge had denied bail based on flight risk assessment and concerning materials found during a warranted search of his residence. They found detailed surveillance notes on all of us, Rebecca explained when James called her immediately. Daily routines, school schedules, security vulnerabilities. The prosecutor characterized it as evidence of escalating obsession and potential harmful intent. The development transformed their situation dramatically. With Daniel in custody facing multiple charges, the immediate physical threat diminished significantly. His ability to orchestrate further corporate or legal attacks would be severely constrained by limited communications and mounting legal difficulties. James drove home that evening with cautious optimism, replacing months of defensive vigilance. The multiple fronts of conflict appeared to be resolving simultaneously. Corporate reputation, restored custody arrangements secured physical safety ensured. Daniel's increasingly erratic behavior had ultimately undermined his own campaign more effectively than any counter-strategies they might have deployed. He arrived to find Rebecca in the garden, with both children supervising their collaborative construction of what appeared to be an elaborate fairy village using natural materials. The domestic tableau contrasted sharply with the threatening undercurrents that had pervaded their lives for months. Rebecca greeted him with uncharacteristic lightness, the persistent tension in her expression noticeably diminished. Peterson called again. The prosecutor is adding stalking and conspiracy charges based on materials from Daniel's home office. They found communications with Jenkins and others involved in the Baldwin Tower situation. The comprehensive legal entanglement suggested Daniel would remain contained for significant time through pretrial processes alone, regardless of eventual case outcomes. The breathing space created by his incarceration would allow their family bonds to strengthen beyond his capacity to threaten. That evening, after the children were asleep, James and Rebecca sat together on the terrace, beneath a sky brilliant with stars. The summer night carried peaceful warmth, a gentle reminder of natural cycles continuing, regardless of human conflicts. I keep waiting for the next crisis, Rebecca admitted, her fingers intertwined with his. It's hard to believe this might actually be ending. James understood her hesitation to embrace apparent victory. After months of continuous threat, security now felt almost suspicious in its sudden arrival. Not ending, perhaps, transforming into something new. The distinction seemed important, acknowledging that challenges would continue, though, hopefully of more ordinary varieties. Parenting disagreements rather than custody battles. Business competition rather than corporate sabotage. The normal complexities of blended families rather than existential threats. I never thanked you properly, Rebecca said suddenly, turning toward him in the starlight. Not just for that night in the rain, but for everything since. For fighting when retreat would have been easier. for showing Lily what genuine strength looks like in a man. James shook his head slightly. I should be thanking you for bringing life back into this house, for helping me become the father Ethan deserves, for reminding me there's more to living than simply existing. Their shared gratitude carried deeper implications. Recognition that their relationship had transcended its crisis origins to become something chosen rather than circumstantial. What began as temporary shelter had evolved into permanent sanctuary for all four wounded souls who had found each other. What happens now? Rebecca wondered aloud, her gaze returning to the stars above. Without constant battles to fight, without threats to defend against, James considered the question thoughtfully. Now we build something ordinary and extraordinary simultaneously. School projects and family dinners, vacation planning and career decisions, all the mundane miracles that constitute actual living. The prospect of ordinary family life so long deferred by crisis and conflict suddenly seemed the greatest privilege imaginable. Not the absence of challenges, but challenges of normal proportion and natural origin. I'd like that, Rebecca admitted softly. The mundane miracles. Their quiet conversation continued late into the evening, shifting from immediate concerns to longer horizons. Ethan's educational needs as he approached middle school years. Lily's developing artistic talents and how to nurture them appropriately. The possibility of relocating to a home without memories of Sarah or associations with Daniel, a fresh beginning for their blended family. As midnight approached, James retrieved something from his pocket, a small velvet box he'd carried for weeks waiting for the right moment. The timing now felt appropriate, not as desperate grasp amid crises, but as thoughtful choice in newfound calm. I've been carrying this, waiting for a moment that felt right, he explained, opening the box to reveal a ring of elegant simplicity. Not because of Daniel or the custody situation or any external pressure, but because some choices deserve formal recognition. Rebecca stared at the ring with complex emotions crossing her features. Surprise, joy, momentary hesitation. Are you sure after everything we've been through, everything still unfolding? I've never been more certain of anything. James took her hand gently, not because of what we've survived together, though that matters, but because of who we've become together. Better versions of ourselves. Stronger, more compassionate, more alive. Rebecca's eyes glistened in the starlight as she considered the ring, and all it represented not just commitment between two people, but formal acknowledgement of the family they had created from separate brokenness. Ethan and Lily. How would they? Ethan helped me choose the design, James admitted with a slight smile. Lily approved the final selection. They've been surprisingly good co-conspirators. The revelation broke through her final hesitation. Then yes, absolutely yes. As James slipped the ring onto her finger, the mundane miracle he'd described earlier manifested in this ordinary yet extraordinary moment, two people choosing each other deliberately, without coercion or crisis driving the decision. The antithesis of everything Daniel had represented in their lives. Their embrace beneath the summer stars sealed more than a traditional engagement. It represented triumph not merely over external threats, but over the internal barriers both had constructed following previous pain, James's grief-imposed isolation, and Rebecca's fear-driven independence. The walls had fallen not through dramatic demolition, but through patient, consistent evidence that vulnerability need not lead to devastation when placed in trustworthy hands. As they returned inside, the house embraced them with peaceful silence, children sleeping securely future, stretching invitingly forward past traumas, gradually receding into appropriate perspective rather than defining present reality. The journey from that rainy night to the starlit evening had transformed them all. James and Rebecca, Ethan and Lily. Four broken pieces that had somehow fit together to create something stronger than their separate wholeness might ever have been. Some might call it chance, a random encounter during a storm, an impulsive decision to stop lives intersecting through mere coincidence. But they knew differently. In that seemingly random moment had been the seeds of redemption for each of them, waiting only for the courage to nurture possibility into reality. Sometimes saving someone else is exactly how you save yourself.